Hi chickens. This one is somewhat of a pagan public service announcement, or a magical and witchy people public service announcement of sorts. I think it's just a collection of thoughts that I've been putting together over the last few months as I've been more routinely speaking with people who are struggling with this particular problem. And I thought to myself, I really want to use the channel as a kind of platform to articulate these thoughts and put them out there in case you yourself are watching this and finding that, yeah, I have the same issues, I'm going through the same things. I have spoken several times on my channel about my personal opinions on materialism in the craft and materialism in spirituality, the use of stuff and the amalgamation of tools and shinies and other little bits and pieces of that nature. And I've spoken about my own personal kind of take on myself as a magpie, you know, somebody who wants to line their nest with a little bit of a shiny silver bottle cap here and there. And I've often said that I make no apology for that, and I still don't. You know, it's still not something that I feel I need to apologise for. And I've spoken before in the past about how I feel that paganism doesn't denigrate the earthly realm. It is not a spiritual path that denigrates the physical or overlooks or downplays the power and the role of the physical and the earthly. And so for that reason alone, I think it's perfectly fine to use tools and to have spiritual representations of your beliefs and, you know, the workings that you're doing and stuff like that. I also think it's a very fair point that witches particularly use physical objects to represent physically what they are trying to do in the intangible, on the ether or in the astral, you know. All of that stuff still stands. For me, I don't think that there is anything inherently anti-materialistic or anti-materialism or anti-the material about paganism. And I do think it's a shame when people try and spin it that way. And I think that if it works for those particular individuals to have a very, very kind of austere practice with not a lot of stuff, or in fact with no stuff at all, then I think that's great for the individual that's worked that out for themselves. But I don't think it's fair for them to dogmatically insist that other people go down the same road and have this very oversimplified, very austere practice with not a lot of physical or material stuff. So that's my take on it. But I also kind of wanted to take this moment to stress to you that just because it's not wrong to have material stuff in your practice doesn't necessarily mean it's right either. It doesn't mean it's right for you personally as an individual. I've spoken to some people over the course of 2015 who have said that they definitely feel as though they are kind of bombarded with and saturated by images of spiritual tools, you know, crystals and tarot cards, altar cloths, beautiful altar spaces, all the kind of paraphernalia, all the occult utensils that you could dream of. And it is kind of making them feel as though they need to strive for the same things, or as though their spirituality would somehow be richer or more profound or more meaningful if they were in possession of those things. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, and I also think it's something that a lot of people just take as given these days. You know, I think it's really actually quite normal for a lot of people, or they feel like it is a normality for them to be scrolling through Instagram and be following kind of a lot of witches and a lot of spiritual people, maybe a lot of spiritual business owners, and they'll just see like deck after sumptuous altar after, you know, like 5-inch, 12-inch, 24-inch, you know, crystals and, you know, obsidian wands. I've seen some banging shit on Instagram, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, like, I've seen some real like Hollywood style movie-worthy altar setups. I don't think there's anything wrong with admiring a setup which is clearly very consciously put together, clearly very well thought out, maybe one that contains a lot of different bits and pieces from different times over the witch's life. You know, maybe the witch is kind of entering that crone stage or that older and more mature stage of having a practice, and so he or she has managed to amalgamate a lot of really cool shit. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying like props to you, kudos for that, that looks really cool, or, you know, that's impressive, or even that's enviable. But I think where it becomes toxic is where you convince yourself that that is what you personally need to make your practice pop, and that is what you need in order to be deemed legitimate by yourself or by others. A few things that I kind of want to stress and put across in this video. Firstly, never ever go broke for your spiritual path. If your spiritual path is, you know, getting to the point for you where it's difficult to choose between that and paying your rent or putting food on the table, you know, or having money for other things that your partner or your kids might like to do, for example, then it's all gone a little bit sideways, it's all gone a little bit backdraft. You need to kind of like pull on those reins and hold the fuck up, get over onto the side slip and just think, what am I doing here? What's going on here? If you see a tarot deck that is the new thing out and people are showcasing it on Instagram and it looks really sexy and people are doing unboxing videos, and you start to tell yourself that you need that tarot deck, but you're looking at your account and thinking, this isn't going to fly, you know, I really should not be spending money on this deck. There are still essentials that I need to get, there's still bills that I need to pay, and I'm kind of like teetering on the brink of being not so secure with money. Do not buy that fucking tarot deck. I'm telling you that now. It is not the Holy Grail. It is not the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's not going to help you to suddenly become fucking Gandalf overnight. Okay, it's not the answer. If you're telling yourself that it is the missing piece, you know, it's the pot of gold, it's what you need to get your practice where your practice needs to be, then I'm going to be honest, you're traveling on a waster's dream ticket, and reality is going to come along and kick you right off the train, because there's no such thing as a, you know, one material object, one deck, one stone, one new shiny thing, one cauldron, one stone encrusted chakra balancing wand that's going to make your practice everything that it can be, and that's going to make you secure in yourself as a witch or a magical being. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. It's a fucking mirage. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a practice that involves objects and involves even the veneration and worship of objects. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. But I think it's really important that people understand that it's got to come from that place which is healthy for you and which is heart-centered and self-loving for you. You know, it's got to come from a place that feels right for you and doesn't feel like something that you feel pressure to get involved with, or otherwise have convinced yourself that you're not a very good practitioner without, you know. If you're telling yourself, you know, I need that deck and I need this deck and I've got to get this deck, I would challenge you to scrub need from your vocabulary entirely. If you're scrolling Instagram and you see, for example, like a massive fuck off crystal ball that's surrounded by all these black candles, and then there's maybe like some deer antlers in the front or whatever, and it looks really sick, and you look at it and you're like, oh my god, that looks fucking amazing, that would be so good for my altar, I've been looking for some ideas and this is the kind of thing that I want to do, and meh. First of all, I would definitely urge you to notice yourself in that state of apparent need, and notice yourself saying to yourself, I need that, I need that, I need to go out and get this, or I need to go online and order this. You know, when you see that brand new tarot deck or oracle deck that everyone's talking about, and you know that financially it would not be a good idea to buy it, and you would feel guilty for buying it, and you would feel like there were all of these other more practical earth-centered loose ends that you hadn't tied up yet, then I would urge you to watch yourself, catch yourself in the act of telling yourself that you need that deck, and sit down with yourself in that moment, in the unfolding moment, because there's a lot of power in the unfolding moment. It's the only true power you have is in that moment, and say to yourself, honey pie, no, no, no. It's just a deck of cards. It's just bits of paper with pictures on. It's very pretty, yes. Maybe pop it on the wish list for another time, sure. You know, make a note of it so you don't forget about it, okay. But it's not the most pressing thing, and you do not need it to be a good witch. You do not need it to be a good reader. You do not need it to be a good professional reader. It is not going to complete your life. It is not going to make everything slot into place. That's bullshit. So I guess what I'm kind of asking you to do, if this is resonating with you right now, is to call yourself on your own bullshit. And that is how you manage to take personal accountability for making sure that what you do buy for your practice is joyful and soulful and means something to you and feels good to you. I think there's a shitload of guilt that goes around in the community sometimes. I really do. Online, offline, wherever the fuck. I really feel like there's quite a lot of cattiness sometimes and judgment in relation to witches that don't make everything that they use, you know, that don't kind of arts and crafts it to make their wand or find their stuff out in nature. You know, I think there can be a lot of back and forth about you know, how hollow it can be to just buy something for your practice rather than actually make it your own or make it yourself or whatever. And again, I think that's BS. You know, I love to buy things from other witches. I'm no good at making you know, like incense mixes, and I'm not particularly into making oils. It's not my thing. I do make my own poppets and other stuff, and I love to, you know, make art for my art magic, but there's a lot of stuff that I can't do and I have no intention of doing, and I love nothing more than to grease another witch's palm for that good shit, because it's putting back into my community, it's showing a witch that I respect what she's doing or he's doing, and the love that they've put into it. You know, I like to do that. It feels good. It feels like a good use of money. There's so much good that can come out of supporting each other, buying from each other, and keeping this wonderful little community going. And There's so much good that can come from saving up to diligently buy something that is going to serve your practice and is going to make you feel good, you know. But you categorically do not need any material object to complete you as a witch or to make you feel worthy. And like I said, that is the waster's dream ticket. You know, there's going to be something else along in a minute. There really is. There's going to be the next thing. And let me tell you, especially when it comes to things like tarot and oracle decks or crystals, there is a profound amount of wisdom to be found after you have worked with just one tool for a really long time. I worked with the Rider-Waite deck for years before I even considered purchasing another deck. It was the only deck I had. It was the only deck I had for the first 2.5 years after I started giving readings to people. I didn't feel the pressure to collect. In fact, I was pretty sure I didn't want to. And even when I did kind of feel this urge to branch out, I knew that it was for the wrong reasons. I knew that it was because I felt like I should be playing catch up with other professional readers because they had a lot of decks, or, that collecting seemed like the thing to do and I didn't want to feel like the odd one out. And I had to kind of stop. I had to stop myself on the side road and be like, honey, no. I had to confront that in myself and talk to myself, because it's not the right reason to part with money. That is not the right reason to part with money in any world. To catch up with others or to compete, or because you feel like you're going to be alienated if you don't, buy decks and collect decks and rave about decks and review decks. That's not the right reason to do it. And I know that at the time when I finally started to purchase other decks, it was slow, it was steady, and it was on my own terms, and it was for good reasons. And let me tell you, working all of that time with the Rider-Waite alone was an incredibly positive experience for me. And I feel like we don't give ourselves enough of a chance to have those kinds of positive experiences. We really don't. We don't remind ourselves of just how nurturing it is and just how much dedication it takes and how prosperous it can make us feel to work with just one object for a while. We're constantly on to the next thing. It's like we've got some kind of consumerist form of attention deficit disorder or something. We are just absolutely buying to consume, to feel that temporary satisfaction, and then it's on to the next thing. And does this mean that I've suddenly turned into somebody who's anti having stuff in your craft? No, absolutely not. That's never going to be me, baby. But I'm just saying, make sure it's for the right reason and make sure it's with pure intention behind it. Don't be like that spirit that comes into the bathhouse in Spirited Away, the one that just kind of just keeps eating and getting more and more full and is never really done. That's not how you want to be. You want to spend your money consciously, and you want to use the stuff that you've bought with your money wisely and in a courageous way. And in a consumerist world, being courageous means saying no to that shit and really bonding with the stuff that you've purchased for yourself, for your practice. And that's really where it is. That's where the magic really happens. So I would definitely recommend, without a shadow of a doubt, allowing yourself to have more and more time with just one deck. Don't purchase any decks for 6 months or 4 months or whatever after you've purchased that latest one. Work with that latest one, go back to the others, revisit them, make friends with them, talk to them, have those important conversations with them. They are animate, they are charged with you, they want to work with you, they want attention. Don't buy them just to put them on the shelf. I'm on the roof. Da, 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 da. Everybody is so individual, and everybody has to do things their own way and follow their own path. And I think for some people it makes a lot of sense and it feels very fulfilling to purchase a lot of stuff or to collect things or to, very much kind of have that material element, and it feels good and it feels right for them. So the important thing to do is to never ever judge people who do seem to use a lot of material objects in their practice. It's not for you to judge somebody else's path, okay? It's not for you to kind of project onto somebody else's journey. Just because you realise at some point that you have been using material objects to fill some kind of hole or to prove something in an egoic way, that's fine for you to realise that, and it's fine for you to remedy that, but it's not okay for you to then turn around and disparage other witches because they have a path that's seems to be centred on having material objects, or that uses a lot of material objects. It's just not cool for you to judge them. So I would definitely recommend keeping it person-centred. Always keep it person-centred. It's not about the other person, it's about you. It's not about the people that you're seeing on Instagram and what they have on their altar and how they're doing their thing. We've all got to mind our own business, and we've all got to look out for what's going on for us and make sure that we're not falling onto a bad path. But I think it's important to recognise that other witches have their own journey, and that's entirely up to them. It's definitely not wrong for everybody. But I definitely would say at the same time that there are people that are definitely feeling sucked in and feeling the pressure to conform to buying, you know, another crystal or another book or another deck, you know. And I would definitely say, don't feel that pressure to conform. Use what you already have, bond with it, learn from it, and make that connection with those objects that you already own that much more meaningful. You know, really take it to that next level, because you can do that, and that is available to you. That experience is open to you. If you find that you're getting, you know, fatigued by looking at people's objects, people's things, and convincing yourself that you need those things, or that you somehow should be depressed or feel down if you don't have those things, then I definitely recommend removing yourself from those influences for a while, you know. It's perfectly okay to remove yourself from Instagram, or, you know, from whatever it is that personally is making you feel less than, until you have worked out a more healthy response to the material in your own practice, and until you've worked out what it means for you to use objects in your practice. Find your own sweet spot, and then you can come back to places like Instagram and Facebook, or looking at fuck yeah altars on Tumblr or whatever. You know, you can go back to that stuff, and you can look at it with a clear head, and you can look at it from a much more healthy perspective, rather than using it to torture yourself, or feeling like it's ripping a strip off of you every time you look at it, you know. Like I said, this is not, you know, a complete 180 where I'm turning around and saying you shouldn't use stuff in your practice. I'm never going to be that witch. I'm never going to be that woman. That is not my message, and it never will be. But I'm definitely saying that if you feel like you have purchased anything for your practice in 2015 that you felt like you needed, or you felt this kind of sick desire to own for an egoic purpose, if you convinced yourself that you needed something in order to be in with the in crowd, or in order to be considered worthy, or in order to be seen as a more professional reader or more legitimate reader, or, you know, whatever, if you purchased more crystals than you needed, or more stuff than you needed, because you felt like you had to have what other people had, then you're not alone. It does happen. And all you need to do is come back to a place of pure intention, and to come back to a place of gratitude, and really just have a look at the things that you already own, and make some decisions about what you have been overlooking in favour of buying other things potentially. You know I've done this myself. I don't own the greatest amount of decks for a professional reader, for a full-time professional reader. Like I said, I've been slow and steady with my collection of decks. However, I have noticed before that I've purchased a deck, and, you know, at the time I probably didn't think it was for the sake of owning it. I probably told myself I was going to get straight into journaling and straight into, you know, really bonding with this deck. But then immediately, pretty much a month later, I've purchased another one. And actually there is a kind of sickness and a bit of a sad-heartedness in that for me, when I do realise that I've done that, you know. And it has happened before. And I think it's really just about being conscious of it, catching yourself in the act of doing that. And when you do catch yourself in the act, don't worry about it. Just say to yourself, you know what, I've already purchased something that I was really excited about at the time, and now I feel like I'm getting that consumerist itch to get something else, but I'm not going to scratch that itch, because that itch doesn't come from a pure place. I'm going to go back to what I've already got, and I'm going to really, really give it my time, and I'm going to invest in it. It's funny how the craft is really about discipline. Being able to do witchcraft is really about that discipline. It's about focus. And it's interesting how many of us are actually, like I said, having some kind of a consumerist attention deficit disorder at times. I'm not trying to be like ableist or disrespectful to those who do have ADD. I'm trying to kind of make a point. It's interesting how many witches, how many magical beings, how many sorcerers and people who manifest and stuff are actually finding that they get stuck on a little bit of a loop where they kind of consume and then they consume again, but they're not really learning enough from the books or the decks that they are getting. And actually the focus, the discipline, the concentration, that is honed when you stop looking at what the next thing is to purchase, and you actually knuckle down and learn from the tools that you have purchased. That is where it really is, and that is how you're going to heighten your abilities and heighten your sense of yourself as a witch. It's not when that next Amazon package comes through the door, babe. It's just not. That's not where it is. It's when you actually knuckle down, you know, and get on with the things that you have been purchasing. You know, open up those packages that you have already purchased and really go with it. And that's kind of all I've got to say. I hope this has been helpful to those of you who did need to hear it, and I'd love to read your comments on this. And so much love. Blessed be.